Okay, good afternoon and welcome to Raw TV. My name is Bradley. As you know, today I'm very, very pleased to be joined by Clare Wright. Clare, what a lovely lady. Today we're going to talk about adding value through town planning with Clare Wright. And we've got a little inverted commas there. Everyday development sites can achieve extraordinary things, which is really, really great. And I really love it. It's cool. Clare said to me, "Do you mind if I say it?" I said, absolutely, go for it, absolutely. And I think it makes absolute sense. So today we're going to be talking about property and planning and property advice and planning advice with a specialist with Clare Wright. I've been through some personal experience with this as well, and so has my family. So this is quite a good subject to talk about, really. Just before we do that, I'm just going to introduce very briefly Raw Business, as I always do. We're an online networking company helping you to get connected, helping your business to get connected. We publish a leading business magazine called Raw Business Magazine. We like to think that it's the ultimate business advice and support magazine. We do face-to-face networking events as well. To help with your motivation, inspiration, and again getting you connected on a face-to-face basis. Of course, today we're on Raw Business Webcast TV. This is a webcast TV channel for entrepreneurs, for aspiring entrepreneurs, for business owners, and we cover a range of support topics, entrepreneur interviews, and hope to bring you many, many more into the future as we move forward. We do get involved as well. I get involved as well with business coaching and inspirational and motivational stuff, which I really, really enjoy. A few changes actually coming up to the website in the next few weeks. We've been through quite a few changes as a business. As some of you may know, in the last few months we've exited from having an investor in the business. It's been a very challenging time for us, and I have to say challenging with a slight smile on my face, because life wouldn't be the same for me without having a challenge every single day. And for us now it's about coming back down to reality. We've moved obviously from quite a large office into a smaller office, and now we're just looking at the website to see how we can benefit our members, so let's bring our members even closer together. And we're about to restart the face-to-face networking events here in Chelmsford, which we're very much looking forward to. In any case, welcome to Raw TV, and thank you for taking the time to listen to this webcast today. If you're listening on a live basis, fantastic, thanks for joining us. If you're listening on an archive basis and you're viewing this in a future date, there's no real difference apart from the fact that there's not the same interaction. If someone wanted to press the chat button, you can do, and we can answer some questions if you wanted to so get involved. Otherwise, we're going to have full contact details for Clare at the end of the show for you to contact her directly, and we'll also be putting some more information up about Clare, and I believe we've got a double page spread coming up in edition 17, is it, of Raw Business Magazine? Yeah. So we're going to be showing this video in the double page spread, as well as more outline information about Clare and what she can do. Just before we move forward then, let me just tell you a little bit about Clare Wright, who she is. Now, we met for the first time about a week ago. Networking event in Kent, didn't we? Yeah. It was a Best of Business event. It was a fantastic event, really great day, and we had a chance to have a chat for half an hour or so at the end. And business is about being connected. We're now connected, which is really great, and we're kind of helping each other, which is really what business is all about. But so, who is Clare Wright? Clare Wright is a chartered town planner. She specialises in finding solutions for development through the planning system, and is based on a successful formula of applying planning law, policy and design to make the case for small to medium scale schemes. Now, working with design companies, developers and private individuals across London, the home counties and England, and of course Clare is providing outsourced planning services to other businesses and specialist planning advice on a case-by-case basis. And very interesting, because Clare's first webcast today, and a lot of the guys that have come onto Raw TV with a webcast, it's their first time they've done it. You know, we're all very conscious of what we look like on telly. We're all very conscious of how we're going to come across, and we're all very conscious that we're going to come across in the right way. And I think, you know, by coming online and doing the webcast is brave anyway. I think the second thing is, sometimes when people come online, they do a webcast, they realise how important that videos are, and how important they're going to be now for the future, and for customers to see. And also, 9 times out of 10, after somebody says to me they've been a bit nervous, they're a bit worried about going on TV, because you know me, I'm very shy, they say to me afterwards, "Oh my God, that was fantastic, and I want to do more." So I hope this is another opportunity for you as well, Clare, for your business, which I think is really exciting, by the way. So what we're going to do today is a kind of interview, discussion, talk on town planning, and we've got some slides to go through. Now, Clare is the specialist, and I've been through a couple of scenarios. In fact, one of my members of my family is going through one now. We can probably relate to that as we're talking, and see how that sort of fits in, and see if this applies to you, because there's obviously so many people that's gone through the planning application to get extensions or changes to house, whether it's a new build, a rebuild, or an extension. And actually, I think the bottom line is, you know, we go to these architects, don't we, which are very professional, and they do a very fantastic job, and we get our plans into the town planning, and if we get knockbacks or we've got to make changes, it can be really painfully slow and tedious. And if you've got your eyes on a house and a development, you're already starting to, once the architects have drawn something up, you're already imagining what's going to happen inside. So there's got to be another way. There is actually. There is another way to perhaps help you save time, to save money, and take some of the stress out of what can be a very, very stressful time going through the planning process, right?
Absolutely.
So today's title, Adding Value Through Town Planning. It's a great pleasure to be joined by Clare Wright for this show. As you know, we've had a mixture of really great people, and we look forward to 2011 having lots and lots more. So welcome to Royal TV, Clare Wright of C.B.Wright and Associates. We're going to go into our first slide, and I'm going to just pass on to Clare just to read through the 5 bullet points, and we're going to sort of go into a sort of questions and answer scenario. But before we do, let me just set the scene for you guys. Okay, my partner Emma has a property in Essex, and the property is on a it's what it was. It's in Claydon Boys, and it's where people used to come out of the city, and they would have these wooden built summer houses. They can only stay in there a certain period of the time, and the road leading up to the private road, so it's a continuation. It's a council road, then it goes into a private road, a bit of unmade bumpy road. But half of the houses or more down this road have all been developed. They've been through planning. Most of them are bungalows, or they've got some kind of dormers, or some have got the, what's the front coming out with the,
the porches, is it?
yeah, the in the roof with the not dormers. Yeah, it's dormers, isn't it?
Dormer
It's dormers. Yeah,
windows,
dormers are coming out, and others have got
dormers
the
and porches. Actually, is the thing. You know, the
dormers
very
and
large
porches.
things.
Oh, that's right. And obviously on the back, sometimes where they can't get the dormers, you have to have the veluxes, don't you? Which
That's
are
right.
not as nice as the. Anyway, so she got refused planning recently. Been using an architect, which I think's done a fantastic job. Planning got refused first hand. She had to go and meet the planners, take some time going out to meet the planners at the council. I think she turned up there 3 times. They were busy, they couldn't see her, and she's got children, we've got children, so it's a very difficult time trying to manage everything. The house is small and she wants to get it converted. There's other things going on as well now. It's been a real pain in the butt, but she's now going through this whole emotional process of trying to get planning approved, and it's very, very, very stressful. And it wasn't until I met Clare actually last week that I thought, fantastic, there's somebody who does something slightly different that could really bring peace to people that are going through the planning process. So
yeah, because if I can stop you there,
yeah,
on that, there's at a certain point you can actually, if you bring in a planning consultant or start from the very beginning, you can look into the background of the scheme and your proposal, and then start to build a case from there, and make sure that case is cast iron before you put it into the planning department, because once you make a planning application, it can become very fixed and it's difficult to change, and then both sides become entrenched. So actually doing that early work and investing in that early work beforehand, and then liaising with the architect as well, because unless architects have a particular planning specialism, they often only really want to design, and that's their specialism.
Absolutely.
So actually bring a planner to help you through the planning system.
Fantastic.
I think is helpful.
It's key and essential. Why don't you introduce the 5 bullet points that we're going to talk about today? And perhaps before you do so, why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do so people can understand? Because I mean, I got it straight away because I've been through the process. But explain to people exactly what it is you do and how you fit in within the planning application structure and this whole process that people are going through. Explain what you do.
Yes. Okay. So I'm a chartered town planner, and I've been working in the built environment for over 20 years now. And at its very basic level, it's a question of filling out forms. It's as simple as that. But actually, before you do that, is liaising with the person that wants to make the development, just to ensure that it complies with any local planning policies. And what I also specialise in, being an urban designer as well, is working out the best case for the development, if there is a case to be made, of course, as well, and looking at the context of the site and how your scheme will fit into the context, because that's all part of making the case for development within the planning application. Now, that making the case is really, in a way, your marketing document, with a design and access statement. And very often I've seen loads of design and access statements where they're just 2 pages, this development is all right, is basically what it's saying. It's as trite as that. But actually there are other ways of making a case. You know, describing the photographs, because it's not just the planning officer that sees your planning application, it may be third parties, so other members of the public, could be the parish council, could be other objectors, an environment agency, for example, that maybe want to know the rationale of what you're doing. So what my job is to put that all into a case, apply the context to building your case. It's not a greatly long process, but it can help in an awful lot of instances. And if the application does run into trouble with the local authority, it can be used as an appeal document as well. And I've had cases where the inspector has actually gone around the appeal site with my design and access statement rather than the council's appeal statement, and actually been asking questions drawing from that, and then quoted it in his decision afterwards. You know, so it has a benefit all the way through. If you don't get it first time, you can take that all the way through, and the inspectorate can see that you've made the effort and done that. So,
do you think it's important for people to understand that, I mean, because this is the first time I've come across somebody like yourself that you could go to first of all, and you could speak to yourself, and you can talk about your outline planning, that you actually do lots of work before you even start to consider what you want to design, because a lot of people will go straight to their art. I mean, this is my experience as well. You go straight to an architect, you start getting an architect to design, and the architect thinks he knows what's right, what's going to be approved, what's not going to be approved. So someone should come to you first of all before they do anything at all. It's something they should consider, coming to somebody like you first of all.
They can come to me first if they want to, and that's great, because I can just ask a few questions. What do you want? How do you think you want to do it? If it's a tricky site, say a tricky brownfield site, I can also help them find an architect. But if they have an architect on board, I can work with the architect as well, because a lot of my work has been in developing briefs for architecture competitions in the past. So I have a very good relationship there. And part of it is actually understanding the language, Bradley. Because architects will speak their own language, you know. Marketeers, dare I say it, speak another language. I'm sad to say planners speak another language again. So, you know...
So you speak another languages then?
And
right.
Yeah, lots and lots of different languages. And there's a bigger story there too. But so yeah, got me off my track now.
Yeah, no, so when you come in at the start,
so I can come in at the start. I can come in when you have an architect, or I can help you find an architect for a difficult site. Sticking with the languages issue, if you find that you've got so far down the line, you have made a planning application, and it's hitting the buffers at the local authority for any reason whatsoever, you know you're talking sense maybe, and your architect's talking sense, but the local authority isn't listening, I can come in as a third-party mediator and a complete stranger to the project and ask some very basic questions, and then begin to unlock those blocks.
Yeah, I was going to say, so that was going to be my second question. Do you come into cases that already exist in where perhaps they're in deadlock, they're not getting anywhere, and no one seems to want to be backing down, so will you come in and you will, obviously you do, you just said you do, but so you come in and you can untangle some of the, and is it just a case of really looking at what the situation is and listening to both sides to try and find a common ground, or is it law-based, or a number of different things and precedents? Is that...
That's all of those points, actually, very good points. What I would do is do an awful lot of research beforehand, have that meeting and ask some basic questions based on the evidence before me, and I might bring in precedents, just as you're saying, or suggest some solutions, but what else? the basic thing, and it's really easy to forget, is just asking those basic questions. You know, why is the development like this in the first place, perhaps? How do you see it fitting in if we do this? What's the issue with the lie of the land? Can you maybe change the development to fit in with this? And just start to tease out why a development is in that particular shape or form, and why the local authority is asking for that as well. And again, it comes back to understanding design and understanding context.
Fantastic. Okay, well, we've got a show introduction here. We've got everyday development sites can achieve extraordinary things, number one. Number two, excuse me, everyday development sites, the problems of small to medium sites. Number three, design is more than skin deep. Number four, some tips and help. And number five, a success formula for a more successful planning applications. So let's just go onto our first slide there. Everyday development sites can achieve extraordinary things. What do you mean by everyday sites can achieve extraordinary things?
Yeah, it's a good point. Very often you can just have a site that's in a fairly ordinary area, and it could be a strange shaped site. It hasn't been developed, and you could just walk by it on your way to work and never really notice it's there. But it is a development site, and it's something where
that's an opportunity for someone to
yes.
to invest in if it could be developable.
Yes,
essentially.
Absolutely.
Right.
Or they may have the site already. I've been sitting on it for a while because it has a poor application history, but there are ways of developing these strange shaped sites.
So even if something has had an application previously, there's still a chance you might be able to get some good news converted with some planning.
Yes.
But it's the way that you go about it.
Yes,
okay, that kind of makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of people that have got sites that haven't gone through the planning, but there is a potential for them to develop, how can you? Is there a way you can raise the awareness of these people? Because I mean, there's a lot of people that might be sitting in a space that's too small for them. They're looking for that planning, but they just don't even know where to start. Because if you've never been through the planning process before, it can be very daunting.
Yes, it can. Absolutely. Well, if they contact, most people will know a planner that they can contact and pick their brains. And by all means, I'm quite happy if you have a site and you just want to ask some initial questions. And it's a question of, as I say on the slides, really, taking that step back and seeing the site within its wider context, understanding what's around it, and then that can sometimes lead to what you can do on the site. But I think we've got some other slides here.
Okay, fantastic. So in summary then, for this particular slide, a standard site that you wouldn't think is anything particularly special. I know it's not special, but you may not realise the full potential what your site could be, and this is what you're saying. So it's like realising the site's full potential. To find out, this could be really important for a lot of people, especially where we are right now in the financial climate, because the housing market and people's value of their asset compared to their mortgage. And obviously we tend to find that at the moment retired individuals are quite cash rich and most of their mortgages are paid off, but they're struggling to probably survive each week on pensions, etc. So there are still opportunities that exist for properties for slight development. I'm thinking to myself, just obviously a slightly developed property might bring a better return of value to selling a property, so there might be people that could increase their net worth and their value by looking at small changes to property. Is that fair to say?
You can do that by small changes to your property. The next step up is if you have a corner site, for example, or it's an oddly shaped corner site, there are things that you can do to that. Which will increase your chances of getting planning permission. If you have a larger site, so if you're a small house builder and you already have planning permission for a type of development, what you might want to do is to go back to that, have another look at it, and see if you can change what's on there. There may be a cheaper way of building. You may have to build slightly differently to come up to current building regulations. There may be other opportunities with that site. Say you have a footpath issue. Actually, is it really an issue, or can you turn it into an opportunity? Can you face it? Can you link to somewhere else Do you really have to have all that space within your site when perhaps there's a public open space nearby that you can make a link to, and then that's another developable space? There's a saying in planning, it's called space left over after planning. It's SLOPE, and it's a pejorative. So all these silly little corners you see on the site that are underused. And really, why are we doing that? It costs a lot of money. They can look unsightly. They can devalue your development. They cost to maintain. Why not organise your development a little bit more so that every bit of space has a job and it has a role to play?
It makes complete sense. Now, just while if I can, just while I was saying that about everyday development sites can achieve extraordinary things, just down the road actually from my partner's house in Clare Boys, there was a corner property, and you just reminded me, because you mentioned corner. So one minute there was just one house in this corner property, the next minute the site's flattened, the next minute they've got development for 4 bungalows actually, on this corner site. Now actually in this particular place there was a shortage of bungalows for retired individuals, so there's been 3 new bungalows put on this house, on this corner, and 1 new house by whoever it is has bought the land. He's now living in the house, and these 3 bungalows have been built that are for retired, specifically for retired. So development. 1 house converts into 4 houses. That's got to have got the owner a few quid in the bank, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So is this another area?
Yeah, it's another possibility. I mean, I'm dealing with 2 sites in Kent at the moment, and one of the sites is basically only ever going to be a single unit house, but the other site. Yes, we found a designer for the site, excellent designer, and he's got 2 properties on instead of 1. That's going through the planning system at the moment. I could do a photo dialogue for you once we know.
Absolutely. That'll be something really great to see on your site as well. I know we're going to speak after about some other things to help it move forward. But this planning is a minefield, isn't it? But okay, so I think that sort of summarises that there are some seriously fantastic opportunities for everyday developments and properties, and it could be anything from just putting a new porch on to going up to maybe, if the land was big enough and the laws permitted,
10, 20 houses, 3 or 4.
Fantastic. Okay, it's a great opportunity. So if you know what you can do, it makes complete commercial decision. I'm just thinking as well, if I was on a corner plot and I could either build 1 house and it might be worth X and I might stay there for a number of years, or I might have to say develop 4 houses on there. They could earn me more money, and I could then maybe say, well, actually, I'm going to go and move somewhere else. It does open up quite a few opportunities.
And the other thing to help you, say you're a house owner with that plot of land, to help you make your decision, what you can do is commission a feasibility study. So it's like all the information you would put in to make a planning application, but you don't make the planning application to the authority, because once you've done that, it's fixed. But you get it all in one place and start to see actually what the feasibility is of redevelopment of 1, 2 or 3 or 4, what the policy implications are for 1, 2, 3 or 4, and how that fits in with the context, build the case, and then you work out the best case scenario. The other good thing about these feasibility studies is they're very clear, and they take your ideas to a certain point where, if it's fairly straightforward in the end and we've come to a solution, you can take it forward yourself as a house owner, and there are no open-ended costs, because that can be an issue with planning applications.
Interesting. Okay, so, feasibility study. Feasibility study.
It's both planning and design, so you do that up front.
Mixture of both.
And people actually don't want to pay for those very often, because they just want the application in, and they, the now people. But I can understand that. Don't we all? We all want everything now. But if you do that and it's not properly thought out, actually it can take a lot longer, and you might not get what you want. And in fact, you might not, even what you think you want might not be the best development for the site. And it's an iterative process. You start with one thing, you see that's a benchmark, and then you think, we've got that, well maybe we could do that, and then you do that, but it's not in the public domain, it's between you and the specialists who are working with you.
So fools rush in where angels fear to tread.
On some
perhaps,
schemes,
perhaps. Okay, slide 2. Everyday development cites the problems of small to medium sites. You know, this is somewhere where the expert is gonna fill it in, and there's some bullet points to lead Claire on. Yeah, Claire, just fire away. I mean, you've got there. There is often a tangible reason why they haven't been developed. Explain to us a little bit more about the problems and challenges of medium sites.
Yeah. Well, as I said before, nobody's noticed they're there. You know, they could have hoardings around them. They're part of the street furniture. They can be awkwardly shaped, so you can't fit a standard box on it. It needs a non-standard solution. You know, if you have a wedge-shaped site, actually you stick a box on it, it can look very, very odd. And actually, if you have a planned area, like a 1950s bungalow development, you know, with the dog bone end of the road, you've got these funny little spaces at the end where you might have 2 properties at the end, and then huge gardens. Actually, you can develop on those, but it needs a specific approach. And if you try and stick another bungalow on there, actually they would have done that in the first place if they could have stuck a bungalow there. So it really does need something different, and you have to test it out to see if it's possible as well, because not all these sites are really possible for development for housing, shall we say, or anything else. So that's part of the feasibility. Some of them might have overlooking problems, and again, the Kent's properties that I'm involved with at the moment, actually, if you don't adopt that standard solution, you can avoid some of that overlooking. Belvedere windows, or just change the orientation slightly, or change other things slightly within it.
Belvedere window.
Belvedere window.
What's a Belvedere window?
So you it's hard to describe. You have a flat window,
right,
that would look out, and it might look out either onto another wall, so you know, it's not very attractive, it's a bit close, and that's down to your choice. Or it might look out into somebody else's window. Well, you've got a choice. You can move your window, or you can put the Belvedere in, and the Belvedere is just a simple way of either putting a brick, let's pop this up here, so that's your window, and then you have a brick wall at an angle, and then so you have your way of looking out is just maybe 20 degrees of window there. So you still get light in, you still get ventilation, but you're not overlooking anybody.
That's giving you some privacy. So you get the benefits of the light, but the privacy also.
And I've seen some very, very clever solutions, and it can look quite good.
So that would be in a very tight space, very limited space. So you're being creative with a tight space, or a challenging situation.
It's a challenging situation. The other one I've seen it in is a chapel conversion. In the Welsh Valleys, absolutely gorgeous, and it's they've done that partly because of overlooking, but actually to get the gorgeous view over the valley. Right. So it has all sorts of benefits and solutions.
Okay, sorry to take you off a track there.
Yeah. Okay, so poorly related surroundings, it can be just an odd shape of land. It can be at the back, and quite frankly, if it's at the back, then it might not be one of the best sites. But actually, if there's lots of backs, then you start to have a site across the back for all you and your neighbours, and then you can make one cohesive development. Because the other issue with these things is, yes, we own our own homes and we are kings of our own castle. But if we just want to do one thing, say it's a Victorian terrace, so you've got gardens back to back, and they're very, very generous gardens. If you just want to do one and pop one house in the back, actually it ain't going to work. Unless you've got a previous precedent. However, if you team up with your neighbours, front and back, you have a larger development site. And is that cohesive enough to get a small development in the back, which relates to what you've got already, relates to itself, and it creates its own context? So that's another way through. I'm sort of imagining sites I've dealt with in the past.
There's something else that's coming to mind as well, that one, the problem of small medium sites. And again, I saw this yesterday, there is a house that had been empty for some time, so there was just a gap of land with the normal fence across the front, which we all knew something was going on. And with sites that you're challenging a very tight on space, what they're doing now is they're going down. into the ground, right?
Crikey, yeah.
So what
It's
they've done
very
is that
expensive.
yeah, so they put these great big steel things up
I know.
to protect her. This is the first time I've seen them do, you know.
Yeah, it's big stuff, isn't
Great
it?
big steel things, you know, like a big boys Meccano set, and it's pushing against the houses either side. They're putting in some side structure to protect the foundations,
Yeah.
and they're going down. So rather than because planning's limited, what they can do up top, I presume what they're doing is they're obviously going into a basement room to get extra space.
Yeah.
So when someone said to me, and I don't know if this might or not because it was talk, that you can go down and there's much less restrictions on planning if you're going to go down and create an underneath or an under garage or some cleaning rooms. I mean, I could be wrong, but
you might well be right actually, because you don't have that height issue, and height is an issue with planners.
yeah.
And
This is the line of sight, isn't it? Or
yes,
something
it
like
is.
that.
Yeah, and that's you know, a fairly standard thing, and it has its place, because isn't it nice to see that cohesive row of roofs
Yes.
and
Yes.
all these things that fit in, and then if you have this sudden jarring element, then yes, that does cause quite an impact. There are ways of doing that as well. Now I'm talking a lot about sites and what you can do with them, these strange shaped sites, but what the other ingredient is, not just finding the site and understanding what it can do, is what the design can do. If you're pushing the boundaries or the envelope on your site and challenging the local planning authority, you need to prepare something very, very good indeed for them to accept development on a site that hasn't been previously developed, or has been developed and you're wanting to redevelop it. If it hasn't been done before, there's that reason again, and it's because it's rather challenging. But where things are challenging, as we all know, Bradley, you can get the best results.
If you've got somebody that knows what they're doing, like yourself.
Yes, and if you're prepared to keep thinking and keep pushing it, and if one solution doesn't work, you try another one.
Try again.
Yes, but you don't just keep trying that same thing.
Yeah, because that would be futile.
Yes, it would, absolutely.
So you're looking for alternatives and adjustments and changes.
Yes, and with that design, high quality doesn't mean high cost, but you do have a slightly higher cost up front because you're preparing all this work before you put in a planning application. It's not hugely more expensive than the work you'd actually need for a planning application, because all you do is recycle it, but it's a lot less stressful, and it gives you the opportunity to think about it. It makes perfect sense.
You hear these horrific stories about people getting divorced over not getting. I mean, I won't mention names and stuff, but I do know someone that's gone through a terrible time on planning, and they ended up they're so stressed out about the planning going, but they were sort of in limbo land because they sort of started doing some internal work which didn't need plan application, with the hope that that's going to come off because they'd started something that they shouldn't have started because they didn't know the end result, and they were living in this kind of building site environment. And the missus was trying to get the clothes, the dust coming in, and then there was like they didn't have a bedroom, and there was, it drove them apart. So I mean, some of the challenges that people go through, and you hear these planning nightmares, don't you?
But also talking about planning. Planning is there for a reason, and quite frankly, if you're neighbouring somebody that's doing all this work, you actually want to be able to have a say if you think it's going to really impinge on your property.
Of course.
And again, we're kings of our own castle, and we just need to know that our current living standards aren't going to be compromised too much.
And equally,
you
there's
can
another
go
side
far.
to the coin, isn't there? That somebody's development can bring extra value to your property, and also it might be that someone develops something in the street and all of a sudden the value of their house has gone up, and then the neighbours start thinking, actually, that's really nice what they've done, and so the house has gone up how much? Okay, but sometimes it takes a little while to convert people, doesn't it? I mean, it can go both ways, can't it? It can have a negative impact and a positive impact, I would imagine.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on. And the other consideration is, talking about planners, is to spare some consideration for the planners actually on the other side. Sometimes, yes, they do deserve brickbats, but actually brickbats.
Have
you not heard of brickbats?
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
One does get them sometimes. But on the other hand, they're human beings at the other end. They've got lots and lots of applications to look at. Their job is going to be made much more difficult. And if their job is made much more difficult under the current economic climate, all the redundancies in public sector, that means that stressed planners on that side are going to have less time to look at your application and to make up the information that's missing. And that's a huge issue. Actually, it's a huge issue with the inspectorate. The inspectorate comes along and they sort of have to put their finger in the air and say, which way is the wind blowing? Okay, that's fine. If you haven't supplied enough information. And there are aspects of design which you can actually quantify and just say, actually, that doesn't fit because it's not quite right here, and it's not right in the street. So you can objectify certain parts of design much, much more. So it's not just subjective.
Yeah, so I didn't think of that until now. So actually the planners are there, they're receiving these applications. And actually, they can at times they must be thinking about that. They must be as frustrated as some of the people applying because they must be sitting there thinking, my God, this is the third time this has been in. I've asked for something as simple as change of X, Y, or Z, and you still come back to me, you've not done it. You're wasting my time, you're wasting your time. So I can see how that, I've not really thought about that.
Yeah,
absolutely. So they must get equally frustrated when something doesn't happen the way that it's intended in terms of the process.
And they can get dumbed down by poor quality applications.
And then next time it comes in, they've got to be thinking, oh my God, it's number 32, Smeaton Avenue again. This Mrs. Jones. My God, when were these people learn? Right.
Apologies to Smeaton Avenue.
Yes, by the way. Of course. Slide 3. Design is more than skin deep. Function is king. We were speaking about this actually before we went live. Claire, tell us a little bit about functionality, because sometimes people can put these designs together and then it doesn't function. What are you suggesting is the best way to go around this?
Start with what you want, what use you want in the building. Is it offices? What sort of offices? Is it going to be offices where people come to it a lot? What space standards do you need? What heights of rooms? Where you want the entrance to be? If it's going to be a sort of semi-public space, actually you want your entrance to have, you want people to find your entrance basically, and it doesn't always follow, believe it or not. Something as basic as that can get left off. So where is that entrance going to be? Is it going to be facing the road that goes to the train station, or is it going to be facing the high street behind you? Which way is it going to be a dual fronted building where you're going to have your reception? And then when you get the job of the building right, then you can begin to clothe that building and put on the skin whatever you want and that fits within the context. The other thought about the function is the building going to be permanent? And if you have a certain, I don't know, certain industrial process, and you're going to be gone from the site within 10 years, actually you don't want to be building a permanent building unless you have an exit strategy, because you could save money and you could recoup money at the end of that 10-year process and in reselling the building.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, or you might think of future occupiers of that building. What might they want? Does your building really need to have to be so specific? And then that again builds, I hate the word, but it helps to future-proof your investment.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And if it's housing, then houses are houses, aren't they? Not necessarily. They could be starter homes. They could be houses of families. They could be houses for extended families. They would want gardens. If it's flats, where do you put the open space? Actually, do you need open space within the development? Again, in that scenario, if you're right by public open space, can you not save money by just putting in a footpath? All sorts of things like that. And then you look at the job of your building and development, and then how it fits in with its surroundings. And it's just looking at the jobs that every bit of space plays to make sure that you link with that. okay, it all sounds very nice, but what's the importance of linking with it? Well, you want people to get to it. You want people to feel that they're valued once they get to it. Otherwise, they won't treat it very well. And there's lots and lots of case studies on that. Actually, CABE have done some very good case studies. So if you have a look on CABE website, especially on Building for Life, and lots of research there.
Interesting, interesting, fantastic. So,
what else have we got on here?
So design is more than skin deep. Function is
Yeah.
king. This is especially true of small to medium sites, which can be tightly constrained. So, again, coming back to that, the last one there, where space is at a premium, it's even more important to make sure that your functionality is perfect, because if you've got a tight space, you want to be able to utilise every nook and cranny without any deads or voids or unusuables. What's your advice there then?
Just plan it. Get a designer to draw up a set of options for you. You know what you want. I don't know, however many flats you want, how much profit you want to achieve from the site, how much investment initially you've made, and then you ask the designer to come up with a scheme that actually fits on the site, and then you start to look at what they've done and start to test it. How much of that space is not managed? How much of that roadway is really needed? Do you really need to create expensive parking courts at the back, for example? Surely that must be old hat by now, but I'm still seeing it. Can they not park on the road? On-street parking can be very useful. There are other ways of handling the parking issue, but parking can actually shape a whole development. So lots and lots of different tunes you can play on one site. And if you're developing on a tightly constrained site, it's often in an urban area with that. You will be mindful of your neighbours, and if you do something on the site before you even get permission, it's really going to irritate people. And if you chop trees down and things like that, actually, could those trees be retained and add value to the development?
Yeah.
If you plant a certain amount of trees, it can actually reduce the amount of heat gain of your site. So again, thinking about thermal comfort in the summer, we often think about the winter, but the summer is becoming more important now, and the amount of heat that bounces off the concrete or the hard surfaces, well, keep a tree on site or plant a few more, and it can make a real difference.
Yeah, you only got to touch a brick at the end of the day on a hot summer's day on the house. You can see how warm it is. Okay, let's move on to slide 4. She's had a fantastic idea as well, by the way. We'll talk about it offline.
Right.
Can't share it with the world just yet. Slide 4. This one is some tips considering the context. And listen, let me again pass back to the expert to explain this. I mean, it's oh look, we've jumped out a queue there on the word sometimes. But Claire, if you want to explain what considering the context means, and explain the tips in greater detail for listeners and watchers.
Yeah, of course. Lots and lots of different things that make up context, actually. You can have policy context, you can have the local political context. We don't want garden grabbing is one.
We don't want what? Garden grabbing?
Garden grabbing. I think that was in the papers last year. Just applications, speculative applications coming up on large gardens which make up these strange shaped corners.
Right, okay.
So sometimes they aren't possible to develop on, but very often they are, and left as they are, they're just sort of awkward little bits of slope,
of course.
Space left over after planning, because people didn't have the imagination with the original plan to continue that same development, and there is a way of finishing something off. So that's part of the context, and then the physical context. So we've got planning law, planning policy, politicians as well, or the local political context, and then physically. So is there anything nearby? Is there a parade of shops that you could actually link to? If you're part of a parade of shops, is there a public space again that you can link to? And that can add value to your proposal. Because if you turn your back on something, then it almost by definition devalues it. So does the site require an amenity space or link to be made to one nearby? Yes, we've got that. Site surroundings, again, offering anything of value. We're thinking about landscape features as well as shopping or links to the rail station or buses. We've discussed parking in courts.
Well, what is this? You're saying here that does parking amenities be provided? We covered this. Does the form of development proposed respond well to its context, or can it be cajoled or coached into something more adventurous? Planners can sometimes welcome schemes that challenge and show innovation. Can you give some examples of innovation that maybe planners might think, oh, this is different, and they'll be more susceptible to saying, yeah, let's approve that.
Yeah. If you can have a development that tries to repeat what's there already, and it's not always successful. And partly because what's there already either isn't very good, so it's just very standard and below standard, or it's exceptionally good, and you won't be able to repeat it because we haven't got the craftsmanship skills. So it could be one way or the other. And so what do? You have to do something of today, I'd suggest, and that adventurousness is probably looking more at form, at taking some of the elements, the successful elements of the surrounding development and putting it into that building. So we're talking about clothing the building. Inside the building, we're talking about a way of living, which is what we're moving on to. Standard buildings that's gone to houses, we all live in them. So the standard construction now, yes, okay, they might comply with building regs, but they're going to be outdated the minute they're built.
Yeah, right.
So if you stick to the basic building regs, and so something that pushes the boundaries again on the innovation, the ways of living, the energy efficiency. It could be passive or it could be active, things that generate power for you and for the grid. So those things, sort of standard examples that would show more innovation. Because
I've got an example of that actually. I've got a friend of mine who is a fairly rural area. Not much planning going on, and the house was one of these green environmental houses. It wasn't built of brick; it was like a wood. It's like a shiplatch kind of. I can't remember what kind of. It was like a shiplap kind of thing. And it had solar panels on the roof line, which were going into inverters to generate electricity back to the grid. It had a water well and a well thing in it, where the water was generated from a well on the land.
Wow.
So they'd done some excavation to find where they could, and it was getting normal water. And there were some other things that were some environmental friendly things. And it got approved, and it looks the strangest house. But because it's green, environmental, energy conservation kind of thing, it got approved. And now it's quite not an iconic, but it's quite that's the house of so and so, and it's made quite a name for itself. I think it actually got the papers as well. And I think it got criticised, but that design's quite awful. That's why I think it's fantastic. So it actually got quite a good discussion going.
Yeah, well, they do, don't they? And if these people had just proposed a standard house in that location, would they have actually got planning permission?
Probably not.
There we are.
Yeah,
that's the point.
Yeah.
The key point. And if that goes on, I would imagine that scheme had won awards or been entered for awards.
It hit the papers, and then it got picked up by conservationist people, and I think he used it as a story of how future living is shaping and how we have to consider. It was an environment issue about the carbon and the footprint and this sort of. I'm not technically gifted on that, but it was the footprint, the carbon footprint. And this house was a very low emission, low carbon generator. It was fairly sustainable, and because they found water, and they drilled down X amount of feet, and it comes up under its own pressure as well, apparently. And then they've got a pump that's in an outhouse. The pump then sends the
Mm.
water in as and when. Very clever.
Wonderful.
Very, very clever. Yeah, it made a talking
Yeah.
point. So that's what you're referring to, is it? By doing
Yes,
something slightly.
something like that. And the other one is flat conversions,
Right.
where you can actually bring the standards up again of thermal comfort, all those things that you need, to more than building regulations. And in fact, you can use that as an exemplar for the local authority to say this is the benchmark of the flat conversions that we want in the area. And that's another way of doing it. So it doesn't have to look wild or wacky, although sometimes that's quite good fun too. It can just be something quietly which behind it is functioning in a different way and allowing the householders. The other issue in the future, Bradley, is fuel poverty. We don't know where our fuel's going to come from. You know, oil is an issue, isn't it? You know, who's going to turn up the
Renewable
tap
energy.
later? Yeah. So before you do renewable energy, which is great, what about reducing what you're needing to use and coming back? I keep saying thermal comfort, but if you insulate your property over and above building reg standards, not very sexy to say just insulate. You know, it's like putting a woolly jumper on. That's it, really, isn't it? Then you can save a lot of money. You can make your building less drafty. There's an issue with airtightness. Sometimes things can be too airtight, and that's not great either. But reduce the need to have to be made to spend on energy.
Yeah,
and that makes a difference.
And then more expensive every day.
But anything on top of that is your choice.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so you have a choice in it. But at the moment, we don't have a choice. We're freezing. We have to whack the heating up, or we're hot. So we have to put the air conditioning on. But actually, that thermal comfort can reduce those wild extremes. If you're a landlord and you have a property that you're refurbishing, what are your tenants going to do? Are they going to heat the property, or are they going to pay you rent?
Yeah.
You know, some will pay you rent.
Yeah.
Some will heat the property.
My father has got exactly that issue going at the moment with heating one of his properties. Yeah, heating. The heating's on all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and he's going mental because the fuel bills are just a fortune.
Absolutely.
And only the water, and that's another story.
Yeah.
But absolutely makes complete sense, doesn't it? Yeah. Love the environment, love your home.
Yeah.
Makes complete sense. Let's have a quick look at slide number 5. Slide number 5, a successful formula for a more successful planning application. This is the planning application. This is the stuff that we like. So this word, consider the context, is coming up again. Yeah, this is coming up again. As you consider the context. So go on then. Let's have a brief understanding of a successful formula for a more successful planning application.
Yeah. Consider the context.
I'm kind of getting the context thing a bit more now.
Yeah. Think about what elements of planning law and local policy you can bring in to support your schemes. So, is there a certain amount of your development that you can do under permitted development, so not requiring planning permission? If there is, how much extra impact is that going to have if the council approves your development? That's basically that.
Yeah.
But also, is there anything within local policy that will actually support your scheme? Because policy, yes, it can be a stick to say don't do this, but actually it can be an encouraging policy. Coming back to design specific to the site, I had a case recently for a granny annex, and that's a very specific issue. Very often the issues arise if they're in the countryside, if it's poorly related to the main house. With annexes, you're almost creating a self-contained property, so it's often contrary to policy. Coming back to design specific to the site, can you make the surroundings of your annex more like the dominant house? So can you maybe bring the boundary around the annex so that it relates better to the house? So that's what I'm meaning in terms of the surroundings, and then design specific to the site. it's an odd shaped site. A standard solution won't fit, so you need to bring something that maybe responds to an octagonal site, and you know, it's all about placing as well as the shape of the building and the materials and where the windows are, and if you need that belvedere or not.
Yeah, yeah.
And you bring it together, and that's the key success point for spatial planners. You need to bring in all three of those aspects. It's planning law, local policy, and the physical surroundings of the site. And if you can bring all those three together, you actually have a very, very strong case.
Fantastic.
So,
Fantastic. Well, this is brilliant stuff. We've had a blast today. When we go at 53 minutes, didn't realise how long we were talking there. Some more information gets on my fault. You know, I talk freedom. More information can be found on Clare's site, which is cbwright.org.uk, and cabe.org.uk is a great source of information. Equally is english-heritage.org.uk/professional. Just explain what's on the English Heritage site, please, Clare.
Lots of information on conservation areas, actually alterations that you can do to 19th century properties, so our Victorian homes that we've got so much of, that you can do to insulate them in a way that's suitable for the property. There are different forms of insulation for different types of construction. You know, if you have a solid wall house, you do different things to cavity. And that gives you some pointers and some ways to live in a place more cheaply and more greenly.
Fantastic. All great stuff. Thank you very much indeed. Well, look, my final thoughts today are very simply checking what you can do will save you time and money. That's without a doubt. If you'd like to contact Clare directly to find out a little bit more about her services without me waffling on, then by all means, please contact C.B.Wright & Associates Limited, 123 Marlborough Road, Gillingham, Kent, ME7 5HD. Telephone number, if you want to call Clare directly, 01634 321 745. That's 01634 321 745. Email, of course, info@cbwright.org.uk. Website, cbwright.org.uk. And recently as well, just to finish off and to say thank you as well, but you've launched a couple of new Twitter characters, haven't you? There's one called the Planning Oracle or something
Planning
like that?
Oracle, absolutely,
the Planning Oracle.
yes, yeah.
Okay, what's the situation behind the Planning Oracle? What sort of things are you going to be putting out with regards to the tweets?
Basically, what's happening in planning with the localism bill, but also some of the cases that I'm dealing with, quick snapshots of the sort of key issues and what's happening, and unpicking. So if you want to read anything more about that to help you in your own development, then yes,
follow Clare at the Planning Oracle. Okay, well listen, Clare, thank you very much indeed for joining us today. It's
Thank you,
very
Bradley.
nice to meet you again for the second time. I'm sure we're going to do lots more stuff together in the future. Planning is something that really interests me, and it's something that interests my family as well. So I'm very pleased that Clare's joined us today to deliver some information on planning and the services that Clare can offer. This is just the tip of the iceberg, and we've talked quite a long way today. Please feel free to contact Clare. She really is an amazing woman, and she's got a very sort of calm way about her, and I can tell by talking to her the last couple of times that I've met her that she's one of these diffusers and solution thinkers rather than the people who like dealing with the problems. And in life, you're either a problem person or you're a solution thinker or a solver. I truly believe that you're a solver, and look forward to hearing some feedback from all members. And in fact, if you've got any queries or questions you want to ask me or contact Clare or for me to put some information, by all means, send me an email. But in any case, that's it from Raw TV today. We've got a webcast tomorrow, actually. Dave Barlow, the Web Maverick, he's coming on at Tuesday the 8th. 2 p.m. Tomorrow, and we're looking forward to having Dave Barlow on board. We've cancelled Dave, I think, 2 or 3 times with technical issues and me being having to run about to London. So we're looking forward to having Dave online tomorrow at 2 o'clock. That's pretty much it from us today. Thank you very much indeed for watching. It's goodbye from me, Bradley, and it's goodbye from Clare.
Yes, goodbye. Thank you for listening.
Have a great afternoon.